Hey Student Success, this is your video for your Chapter 2 lecture. So this will cover content from Chapter 2. So Chapter 2 has your textbook link and then 2 sets of slides. I will actually be relying on the slides for most of this lecture and then just referencing your textbook. And as I mentioned in your Chapter 1 lecture, if there's a section that you need particular attention to, for instance, maybe time management is an area that you need more focus on, then I encourage you to definitely take a look at that inside our textbook more in detail. So let's jump in. All right, so part of Chapter 2 talks about organizing your space and time. So where you study does have a big impact. Oftentimes there's a lot of research that says you should not study at home because we're at home, the dryer goes off, the dog barks, we think about the grocery trip we have to make, whatever the case might be. So we should be studying in a more academic space, going to campus, going to the library, somewhere that has that academic atmosphere to it. But let's be realistic, we can't always just hop up and go somewhere every time we need to study. So therefore you need your own space and time. So whether that means you have like an actual maybe office space in your home, whether it's the dining room table, hopefully not during dinner, but wherever that is, you need your own space and time for that. So if the dining room table is the best academic space for you, maybe it's 6 in the morning or maybe it's 8 at night, but finding that time as well, and then having it set up for academic needs, because you need to be in that academic mindset no matter where you are studying. So just thinking of that dedicated space and time. And then how can you get to that dedicated space and time? Associate it with studying. I have students who will say, oh, I read for school at night in my bed and I fall asleep and I can never remember what I've read. Like, well, yeah, that's going to happen if you are reading in your bed. It's a place associated with sleep, not necessarily with studying. So you need to have a place that is associated with studying, again, like some sort of desk or table, quiet atmosphere, available when you need to use it, making sure that it meets your psychological needs, making sure that you have set up boundaries if you're studying at home, if you live with a partner or children or a parent, whoever that might be, making sure hey, on Monday, Wednesday nights from 7 to 8, this is my study time. And so just kind of having that place set up, making sure you're free of distractions. One of the things I like to do before I sit down, whether it's to record a lecture or to read something like an article, is I will do a brain dump. I will get my Post-it notes out and I'll write a quick to-do list of things that I know I need to get accomplished later that day. That way, while I'm reading, I'm less likely to be like, oh shoot, don't forget to do this and don't forget to do that, so that I can be a little bit more focused. And then just know that there's going to be interruptions and just kind of be prepared for that and give yourself breaks. We don't want to study for hours on end without a break. Something that kind of goes along with this is the idea of multitasking. In my face-to-face classes, we do a little multitasking activity, but our textbook does talk about how for a while it was thought multitasking was helpful, but a lot of research of the past 10 years or so, coming out of MIT in particular, has said that multitasking is actually detrimental to our functioning and understanding of different tasks, because really we can only focus on one thing at a time. Now, I'm not talking about multitasking as a person, right? We can make dinner and maybe have the TV on in the background, or watch our child play and then check a quick text or something. We do that kind of multitasking. So this is really focusing on academic multitasking, making sure that we are really focusing on the academic task at hand. Because if we are trying to read for a class and watch TV, or type a paper and then work on a math problem and then go back to typing a paper, it's actually going to take us more time to do all of that, and it's going to result in lower quality work. So we want to just focus on one thing at a time. So this also goes into more making sure that your study space is ready to go. One of the things that I had to learn, and that a lot of students have to learn, is knowing how to say no. It's really hard sometimes to tell either whether it's friends because they want to go out, it's a family member who needs something, it's a committee that needs your attention, whatever the case is. Sometimes you just have to say no, or maybe you can say not now. So learning how to kind of put up boundaries, of course, knowing priorities and things like that, if it's an emergency versus if it's just something that is casual, sometimes you do have to say no or not now to someone because you need to invest your time. When you go to school, it should be at the top, not always the top, but at the top of your list of priorities, right? So maybe top 5 at least, hopefully it's in that top, maybe even top 3 while you're going to school. So you do have to prioritize and make time management the key to being able to get everything accomplished. Okay, other things that our chapter talks about in chapter 2 is staying motivated. So motivation really is, and I know I talked about this in the chapter 1 lecture, is the thing that's going to sustain you over time. Whether it's because you're not interested in a content area, in the professor, you have to have your own motivation. And it needs to come from internal motivation. So intrinsic motivation is what is going to get you through everything. Because external or extrinsic motivation is great, like getting a grade, getting a job, getting that recognition. Those are all things that are external, and those are helpful for our motivation. But we need that internal. We need that sense of pride, sense of accomplishment, sense of self-worth, whatever it is that helps drive you. If you don't have that internal motivation, outside motivation is going to be really difficult. So that's why it's important to ask, why am I here? What is motivating me to do this? Part of that could be setting goals. So setting goals, both short, medium, and long-term goals, are going to help with that motivation. So making sure that you, I don't know, I don't want to pick on math, but math was always like a subject that a lot of students bring up. You might not be very motivated in math class, but if you set a goal, like I'm going to get through math class and I'm going to get at least an 80%, I'm going to learn a new skill or a new concept, those goals can kind of help get you motivated through a class that may be challenging or not particularly interesting for you. I always have my students jot down goals to begin the semester, and that's one of the recommendations. Jot down 3 goals that you like to reach. And this could be academic, like a certain GPA, a certain skill. It could be non-academic, like not like directly academic. I want to improve time management. I want to improve my study skills, so not necessarily like a grade related goal, but it's important to have those goals and then put them in a place that are visible to you so you can reference them, go back and look and see, how am I doing with meeting these goals? Part of the goal setting though, if you have a goal of, I want to get good grades. Okay, in theory, that's all right, great, you want to get good grades, but that's not a very clear goal. So specific would be, I want to get a 3.4 GPA, right? That's a little bit more specific. Can I measure that? Well, yeah, I can measure 3.4. Is it realistic? Only you would know that, right? If you were a decent student in high school, a 3.4 might be realistic. Even if you weren't a decent high school student, maybe you got really bad grades in high school, but you weren't putting the effort in, and you know that you can do better, it still might be realistic. And then can it be flexible? This is a big thing. People think they have to set a goal and then that has to be their goal. Let's say you set a goal of a 3.4 GPA and throughout the semester, anatomy and physiology is just kicking your tail. You're like, you know what? A 3.2 is going to be okay. And that's totally fine. It's totally fine to adjust as needed based on new information as it comes through. The point is to constantly reflect on those goals. Go back and look and see, how is my progress going? Am I making progress in the positive fashion to meeting this goal? So there are, again, as I mentioned, different types of goals. You got your short term, kind of middle ground, and then long term. I always like to start backward. So I set my long-term goals first, and then the other goals should build on it. So if you have a long-term goal of getting a degree, right? Hopefully that's what you're all here for, is either transfer, get a degree, get a certificate. Your midterm goal, your intermediate goal, should have something to do with it that's going to help you reach it. And then your short-term goal as well. So maybe some short-term goals will be to complete all your homework this month. Your intermediate goal will be to pass all your classes, and then your long-term then would be to get that degree. So making sure that you're thinking about those goals in different types of time periods. And then there are process goals. Again, a goal is, if you've ever heard that phrase, a goal is just a wish unless you put the work into it. So you want to make sure that if you set a goal, how are you going to get there? So if your goal is to, pass every test in your physiology class or your psychology class or whatever it might be, well, okay, great. How are you going to get there? And what does pass mean? Are you going to get A's? Are you going to get C's? Are you going to make flashcards? Are you going to get a study group? So really making sure you know how you're going to reach those goals is the other part of the goal setting. And then setting them at different levels. You want to challenge yourself, but not go way out of reach, because the more challenging goals can really help you motivate, even if you don't meet the goal. There was a really interesting study done. It was a longitudinal study done, and it's in our my other textbook for the 115 class, but it was a longitudinal from the 1970s to the 1990s, and they followed a group, and I'm talking thousands of students, to see how they felt if they met their goal versus if they didn't meet their goal academically, based on what kind of degree level they wanted to meet. And one of their findings was surprising to me, that students who set a goal for like either a bachelor's degree or an associate degree and they didn't meet that goal, they were not negatively impacted as much as you would think. They still felt like they worked hard toward a goal. Their motivation was still there. They still had a lot of self-worth. So even if you don't reach your goal, but you put the work in, it's going to help with your motivation. It's going to help overall. Here are some other suggestions for getting motivated. So if you feel like your motivation starts to lack, especially around halfway through the semester, making sure assignments are broken up into small chunks. Even if you have a large paper due in 2 months, week 1, you start gathering sources. Week 2, you start reading the sources. Week 3, you outline, making sure that you are breaking that up. Set goals every time you study. Give yourself rewards. I had a student one semester say anytime she got up and went to class, she got herself a coffee. All right. I didn't know her backstory. If maybe she struggled just kind of getting through the day and a coffee helped her, fantastic. But you also want to make sure that rewards meet, what you're doing. So if you put a lot of effort into passing a test, give yourself a decent reward. Take yourself out to dinner or buy yourself a new whatever. So give yourself rewards. Not all the time. You don't want to constantly reward yourself, but it's okay to reward yourself. Share your accomplishments with someone. Like, hey, I studied really hard and I passed this test. Seek help if you need it. Go get the assistance, tutoring center, writing center, digital library, instructor, wherever you need to go to get that help. Organize with a group of people, even if it's an online class like this. Reach out and say, hey, do you want to just help each other, check in with one another? Not necessarily like a study group, but like just checking in, a motivation check-in group. Talk positively to yourself, even if at first you have to fake it, because sometimes we do like fib to ourselves a little bit, like, right, I can do this, until we can get to that point. Give yourself some breaks. Try to make connections between what you're working on in school to your overall life. Prioritize, all of these things are ways to help your motivation, and then just keep tabs on it. Recognize whenever you're getting overwhelmed and you might need a little bit of help with that. All right. Also in the chapter 2 text, you'll see, I encourage you to go through and really look and see, like maybe you struggle with time management. So you're going to go to this section in particular and really try to get some time management tips. And there's like a little activity that you can see, like, where is my time going? There's another one down here. It talks about like a time log. How can I use my time more effectively? So lots of different tools in our textbook for time management, different success strategies. So if you feel like if you're a procrastinator, if you feel like this is your area that you really need to focus on, I encourage you to spend more time reading this particular page. Like I said, it's quite lengthy. Or maybe you're just having a hard time finding like a place to study. What kind of tips can you have to study? So as I've mentioned multiple times, I really want it to be beneficial to you. So take a look to see what is going to be helpful to you. What readings or text sections can you use? All right, and that is your chapter 2. Until next time, bye.